Hey everyone, welcome back to bageltcg. Today we're going to be doing a deck tech for Viserai. This is the recent deck that just took down the Hardened Portland. So Hardened Portland just happened this weekend, and over the course of this week, I'm going to go over some of the decks from the Hardened Portland before upcoming events like the other Hardened and the Calling Singapore this next weekend. But before we jump into this deck tech here, I want to shout out my Patreon. If you want to see kind of in-depth sideboard guides, longer rambly videos, and other cool stuff like additional giveaways, stuff like that, you can come over and look at the Patreon. Give me some support there. Got a Bravo deck tech guide, Dash, stuff like that, and I really appreciate the support. Also, shout out to our sponsor, Whipped and Wizard. Use the affiliate link in the description to support the channel. But let's get into the deck tech here. So actually, let's first look at the Hardened Portland. We can see we have the top 8 decks here now on the Flesh and Blood website. They have a lot of trouble uploading them sometimes, so hopefully they're all correct here. But you can see we had Viserai take down the event, beating Prism in the finals. Rounding out the semifinals was Dash and Prism, and then the rest of the top 8 was Bravo, Oldham, Dramai, and another Prism. So feel, I guess, a little correct with my tier list. I put Viserai as the top hero, and he ended up taking down the event. Prism and Bravo were rounding out my S tier along with Dash, and all of them made the top 8, so every S tier hero made the top 8 here. You can see Prism obviously overperformed the others. She was the only hero with multiple showing up in the top 8, and she had 3, so pretty big performance by Prism there. Only 2 points away from Living Legend. And then the rest of the, I had from my A tier, we've got Oldham here. And then the last hero, the only hero that wasn't in S or A tier, we have Dromai. And I think I actually should move Dromai up to A tier. I'm actually going to play her tonight at my local armory just because I think there's some stuff I don't understand about Dromai yet that's really cool. But we're going to start with the top Viserai deck here. And then maybe we'll do some deck techs on some of these others. Like, for example, the Dromai deck I think is really cool. And then maybe something like some of the Prisms, the Dash, stuff like that. But let's hop into the deck tech. So we've got Viserai here. Viserai is the OG Runeblade hero. No talent on this hero, just a Runeblade. And we're rocking 8 loadout here. We have the classic weapon, Rosetta Thorn. So Rosetta Thorn, very classic. 1 for 2 physical and 2 arcane. And then our main chess piece is actually going to be this Aether Ironweave. So common equipment here, which is pretty nice. Ends up making this deck not budget, but nice to have a cheaper common chess piece. Blocks for 1, and then the nice thing is it has Battle Worn. So after you blocked with it, on a later turn, you can pop it, destroy it to gain 2 action points, or sorry, 2 resources after you've played an attack action and a non-attack action. We do have the Fyendal Tunic as well. This is for really long grindy games against control decks, against like Oldham, for example. We're going to want Tunic. It's going to get us a lot more value in terms of resources compared to Ironweave, but in most matchups, the game's fast enough where we're just going to want Ironweave. Our classic arm piece here, Grasp of the Arknight. Very, very good arm piece. Makes a rune chant on demand and blocks for 3 total throughout the game. We are running Vexing Quill Hand as well, just for some Arcane Barrier mostly when we need it. Other Arcane Barrier is this Crown of Dichotomy as our headpiece. An Arcane Barrier. Arcane Barrier 2 ends up being pretty nice, so that's what we're opting for here. Our main headpiece, though, is of course the other crown, the Crown of Providence. New kind of standard headpiece here. In most scenarios is better than Skull Cap. And blocks for 2 lets you filter, which is really nice. And then lastly, we've got Spellbound Creepers. This deck doesn't really activate them as much as other Viserai decks. I mean, so a lot of the games, they're just going to be Iron Rot boots that look fancy. But sometimes you'll be able to use them to make really cool plays by attacking with an attack that doesn't have Go Again, and then using it to play a non-attack that does have Go Again to get your action point back, which is pretty nice. For only 1 resource, that's a lot of value, and then you can still block with it the turn after. So that's the loadout here. Let's hop into the main deck. So From what I understand, I might have this a little off, but he kind of has this main core of like 49 cards. I think this is actually somewhat similar to how Arsenal Pass talked about the deck, with like a core deck, and then also cards that come in and out all in the sideboard here. You can see, but let's look at the core deck first, right? So this deck is kind of a Modern Skies deck. It's really trying to just to play a Modern Skies basically every turn. Modern Skies, we're playing all 9 of them. It's just a Runeblade non-attack with Go Again, and it gives your next Runeblade attack action Go Again, as well as a pretty relevant on-hit of creating Rune Chants if it hits. So the blue makes 1 Rune Chant, the yellow makes 2, and the red makes 3 Rune Chants if it deals damage. If it hits the opponent. Actually, it doesn't have to hit the opponent. It can hit anything, which is important for dragons now. So it's a really Modern Skies deck. And we have a lot of cards that don't have Go Again but benefit from getting it. So, for example, we've got the Shrill of Skullform here. If you play a Modern Skies and then play Shrill, it'll make a Rune Chant because of Viserai's ability, and then that'll count as an aura. So Shrill will come in for the red at least, will come in for 7 Go Again. And since it only costs 2, if you're pitching a blue for that, you'll have 1 floating to come in with your Rosetta Thorn as well. Other good cards, we've got Spellblade Assault here to come in as well with that nice attack that has Go Again. And then we've got some others in the sideboard. We've got like Meet and Greet, Runic Reclamation, Amplify the Arknight, Consuming Volition. Lots of Runeblade attacks that want Go Again. Outside of that, we are trying to make a decent amount of Rune Chants on a lot of our turns. So we're going to try to abuse Mordred Tide in this deck. It's kind of our big power card. Basically, every time we make a Rune Chant on that turn we play Mordred Tide, we get 1 extra. And that counts Viserai's ability too, is the main part. So Mordred Tide plus Revel is kind of the strongest combo. So Mordred Tide and then play an attack and then play Revel and Runeblood. Revel makes 4 Rune Chants plus 1, so 5 total Rune Chants from Mordred. And then it'll make 1 Rune Chant plus 1 from Viserai's ability, so 2 from Viserai. So just by playing a Revel, it makes 7 Rune Chants, so it makes your Revel basically a 0 for 7 damage. If you can play 2 Revels after a Mordred, that's 14 damage over 2 cards. So you can go Mordred Tide, play an attack. So for example, play like a Swarming Gloomveil. If you play a Mordred Tide and then Swarming Gloomveil, you'll make 2 auras from Viserai. So you'll have 2 modes activated from Swarming Gloomveil and come in for 4 Go Again. And then you can play Revel to make 14 Rune Chants and then swing your weapon, right? And that'll come in for 2 plus 2 plus 14. So coming for 18 damage right there, just on a Rosetta swing. So pretty powerful combination. We're also playing Rattlebones here. This is not always going to grab a Swarming Gloomveil, but it's one of the best ways, one of the best cards to grab. If you pitch a blue, play Rattlebones to grab this Swarming Gloomveil, and then play Swarming Gloomveil, you'll have 1 floating after to swing your weapon. And that's a kind of 3-card combo to do a lot of damage. We've talked about the Revel and Runebloods, very powerful cards. We've also got the Rune Flashes here. This is hopefully a 0 for 4 Go Again. If it's a 1 for 4 Go Again, that's fine. It's not even the end of the world if it's just a 2 for 4 Go Again. Hopefully we don't have to play it for 3, but that's still not even the end of the world. But yeah, it ends up being a pretty good card. I mean, if you can have 3 Rune Chants when you play this, 0 for 4 Go Again is very above rate, and also blocks for 3. We've talked about the Shrills as well. We're playing 3 blues and 2 reds. That was kind of the biggest surprise for me with this list. I saw most people running all 9 Shrills, so he definitely went down a little on the Shrills and kind of up a little actually on the Spellblade Assaults. Went for a bit more split damage here. We've got these Sonatas. Sonata is a very powerful card for Viserai as well. If you can put 2 resources into it, you'll flip the top 4 cards of your deck. And if you can hit 2 non-attacks and 2 attacks, you'll get to basically draw 2 cards and deal 2 arcane damage, which is very, very powerful. If you have a hand with a lot of blues, you can put even more resources into Sonata, but this ends up just being one of your power cards in your deck. You'll notice this deck has quite a few power cards, mainly with Sonata, Mordred, and Revel, but they all end up making a pretty powerful package here of an aggro deck. Swarming is just a really nice 0 for 3 or 0 for 4 Go Again. Sometimes it'll hit and make your Arcane unpreventable that turn, but pretty often we're just happy with it being a 0 for 3 or a 0 for 4 Go Again. That also blocks for 3. We're playing the red and the blue Spellblade Assaults. This is a great card. It's basically a 2 for 6 on the red. It deals 4 physical, but it also makes 2 rune chants. So it's kind of split damage here, dealing 6 total damage, but split 2 ways. And in Flesh and Blood, generally, split damage is the best way to do it. We're also playing the blues here just because they're great as well. Still a 2 for 4 split damage. We're playing the Specialization Become the Arknight here. Awesome card. It lets you discard either a non-attack or an attack to find the other. So you can discard a non-attack to get an attack or an attack to get a non-attack. This lets us set up for our really powerful turns with Mordred and Revel, find a Sonata, anything we need. So this really helps us find the missing piece, since our deck is trying to kind of put a lot of pieces together to make a powerful combination. And then rounding out our blues, we've got these Lead the Charges. This is just a way to give our 2-cost attacks Go Again as well. Doesn't actually give Go Again, gives an action point, which ends up being about the same thing. Really great with our 2-cost attacks like Spellblade Assault, Shrill of the Skull Form, and then sideboard cards like Erase Face and Command and Conquer. Playing 1 blue Dread Triptych. I think this is mostly, you're probably not going to cast it as much early because it does cost a lot and it only comes in for 4. But maybe if it's pitched and then you pitch it with another blue because you're mostly pitching blues, it'll be nice as a second cycle card. And then rounding out our blues, we've got some Vexing Malice and Spellbait Strikes. These are mostly just blues that block for 3, but sometimes in a pinch they'll deal some extra arcane damage. Let's look at the sideboard now here. So in the sideboard, you can see we've got starting 2 Erase Face here. Really nice tech card against decks that care a lot about their class or their talent. So actually against other Viserais, this is quite good. A lot of our cards really care about being Runeblade cards. For example, Viserai's hero ability only makes rune chance if they're Runeblade cards being played. Mauvrin Skies will only give Runeblade cards Go Again. So really impactful card there. Other matchups, maybe like Phi, takes away their Draconic talent. So in a lot of matchups, this Erase Face will end up being quite good, and you'll definitely want to play it as another powerful threat. These 2 Lead the Charges are basically just for Prism, and that's it. But they're nice in that matchup. These Meet and Greets are actually they're in the side here, but I think they're in for most matchups. I don't remember exactly what matchups they're out in, but I think they're mostly just out in the Prism matchup because you don't have the slots for them. But pretty good card. Probably could be just considered part of the main board, honestly. But yeah, cost 1, comes in for 4. If you've dealt Arcane, it has Go Again, and if it hits, it makes a rune chant. Kind of just does it all for only 1 resource. We have 3 Runic Reclamations, another really powerful card into Prism. Costs 3 and attacks for 7, so it pops Phantasm, but it also, if it hits, destroys an aura they control. So really powerful card, and can be great into other matchups too. For example, Icelander, it can destroy Frost Hexes, stuff like that. Other decks that care about auras, this is great into. Just any deck that cares about auras, really. We do have 2 kind of setup cards. We've got Read the Runes that costs 0 and makes 3 rune chants, and then Runeblood Incantation, which costs 1 and makes 3 rune chants over the course of 3 turns, but does have Go Again. So I assume these are in, at least the Incantation is probably in for most matchups. So I guess I'll put that in the main board here as well. But I think they might be for more setup, or maybe when you're going first, for example, you might want to put in Read the Runes, since if you draw it when you're going first, it's a nice way to get some extra damage on the board. They're both a lot better when you're going first. And they might be for some more setup matchups, like I said. So against control decks, you want to set up a bit more. So this Read the Runes is going to be better against an Oldhim, for example, than against a Phi, where it only blocks for 2 and is probably too slow to be played against Phi. Other than that, we've got these 2 Unmovables. These are mostly for Guardians, especially Bravo, which can sometimes be a hard matchup for Viserai, who really wants to have his whole hand or at least 3 cards to do powerful stuff. He definitely doesn't want to get Crippling Crushed. So these 2 Unmovables are for those Guardians, probably just for Bravo, maybe for Oldhim as well, but that's basically all they're for. We've also got these 2 Amplify the Arknights. These are great cards. I'll put these main board as well. These are probably in most of the time. And it's kind of just a 0 for 6, hopefully. Same way Rune Flash is kind of a 0 for 4 go again. We're hoping this is a 0 for 6. Some matchups it might be a little too slow because it's not always the easiest to get 3 rune chance just sitting there. But in some matchups it's quite good, and obviously it's also a Phantasm Popper for Prism. And against some slower decks, it's not too hard to make this happen, especially when you're playing stuff like the Rune Blood Incantation. Outside of that, we've got these 3 Command and Conquers. These are another great disruptive tool. We've got a good disruptive package in general with the 3 Command and Conquers, the 2 Erase Face, and these 3 Consuming Volitions. They all have some pretty good disruptive effects. So Command and Conquer is obviously a classic that destroys your opponent's arsenal. Comes in as a 2 for 6, so it blocks for 3. And then Consuming Volition, if you've dealt or if you deal arcane damage this turn, it gains, if this hits a hero, they discard a card. So it's a 1 for 4 that blocks for 3. Another nice disruptive effect. These are great against most aggro decks, so when you're in an aggro mirror match, this Consuming will be a lot better. Not as powerful against, Oldhim or Bravo or defensive decks that don't care as much about the on-hit because they're going to be blocking anyways, but Consuming is best against decks that don't want to block. So if you think your opponent is going to want to block you a bunch, it's not really worth going into the deck, but if they hate blocking, if it's another aggro deck and they don't want to block you, this card's really going to give them a rough day where they have to choose to either block it or lose a card anyways. Command and Conquer, on the other hand, is good in most matchups, honestly. Even against control decks, they're going to play a lot of defense reactions, and a lot of times they're going to arsenal those defense reactions, so this will come in, and if you can sneak it in at the end of your chain, they might not have 6 block anymore, and you'll be able to grab their defense reaction from their arsenal. So I think Command and Conquer is probably in most of the time, but some matchups you might not want it as much. It might be too slow, or it might not be a deck that cares about their arsenal as much. So not always in, but mostly in. So yeah, that's the deck. I think we've gone over every card. Oh, actually, right up here, we've got this Arknight Shard. This is the last card we haven't gone over here. Arknight Shard is his Fable Viserai specialization, the only hero with a Fable that is specialized to them. It's just a blue, but when you pitch it, it makes a rune chant. He said that the first place player said this is the 61st card. So that means, when he brings it in, it is number 61 in the deck. It's when he wants the little extra cards. And that's kind of something you'd want against decks that are slower, like Oldhim, Bravo, maybe sometimes even Prism. When they are, when you might see your deck a second time, right? You're going to set what we call second cycle. You'll second cycle. If you can pitch this card twice, that's a lot of value, getting an extra rune chant 2 times. And you'll want some extra cards in your deck against those matchups anyways. So if you don't want to buy this Fable, I don't own an Arknight Shard, so don't feel bad about it. You could probably just add in a 3rd Erase Face, honestly, or maybe another blue, like an extra Dread Triptych or an extra Spellblade Strike. Anything that's just an extra 61st card. Obviously, it will help you in certain matchups that are a bit slower, but by no means is necessary to the deck's complete success. And yeah, that's really the deck. I think it's an awesome deck. This is kind of close to what I was looking at when I said Viserai was the best deck. Like I said, I was looking at a version that had 9 Shrill of the Skull forms, so a little surprised to see those cut. But he added in some power cards like Meet and Greet, Rune Flash, Red Spellblade Strike that I wasn't looking at as much. And I like the more disruptive cards like Erase Face and Command and Conquer here as well. And I think he's also probably pretty happy he teched for Prism with these yellow lead the charges, just because he did end up facing quite a lot of Prism that day. And Prism is probably, might actually be the strongest deck right now and not Viserai, but I think it's close. I think they're both quite strong. So yeah, that is the deck. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. Thank you for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.